If you're a federal agency buyer, state procurement officer, or a contracting officer that's looking for a fast and a compliant way to order translation or other language services, then this video is for you. I'm going to walk you through exactly how to order those services through the GSA schedule contract, what that means for your procurement process, and what to look for in a language services vendor. So the GSA Multiple Award Schedule, or the Federal Supply Schedule, or the MAS, is a long-term government-wide contract with pre-negotiated terms and rates that pre-qualifies vendors to work on those services or provide those products to the United States government at any level. Now, whether or not your procurement function has access to purchasing through the GSA schedule is something that you're going to have to follow up with your team. But by and large, across the United States and on many state, local, and federal level, purchasing through a GSA negotiated contract is a highly recommended and a very viable solution to many compliance purchasing options. And when you order through a GSA schedule, the federal requirements for FAR 8 are already satisfied. You don't even need a separate full and open competition. That part has already been done. For many agencies, this means that you can issue an order the same day or in days rather than weeks or months from working through the full RFP lifecycle. And language services fall under the professional services category in the MAS. So before you go and order any of these services, the very first thing that must be done that we need to verify the vendor's GSA number, or make sure that their contract with their GSA number on it is active. So you can go right to GSA Advantage, gsaadvantage.gov, and search for the vendor name by their contract number. An active contract will show a current active contract period and the SIN codes covered under that contract. For translation, that's typically under the professional services, and those will be for example, from a language service contractor, those will be for language services or translation that's typically under the professional services section. And of course, there will be approved pricing for all of those items. And if a vendor tells you that they're actually on GSA, but they don't actually have a profile on there, that's a big red flag. My company is listed as Taika Translations LLC. We're a limited liability company. We provide those services to the United States government, among many other services. And that's an active contract that you can verify today. Under FAR Part 8, the ordering thresholds work like this. Under $10,000, the micro purchase threshold, you can order from any GSA schedule vendor without further competition. Your government purchase card, or P card, is typically sufficient. Between $10,000 and $250,000, that you actually are required to go out and request quotes from multiple vendors so that you can compare them and contrast them and decide which one's in the best interest of the government for your purchase. You issue an RFQ to multiple vendors holding that SIN number, and you may conduct a best value competition for that item. In practice, most agencies for services, they fall in the first or second tier of the purchasing matrix. And we're happy to provide that comparison quotation if you need it. If you're a state agency, maybe a county, a school district, or some other type of local government entity, you may not be able to use the GSA schedule directly. But the very next best option is called the NASPO Value Point contract. And that's the cooperative purchasing program that all states have access to, provided your procurement office in the state approves the contract. And most of the time they do, because this is also pre-negotiated pricing and a pre-performed complete RFP lifecycle for a type of contract or commodity that's being purchased, so that you as a state administrator of purchasing have access to such items. Taika Translations LLC, our company, also holds a NASPO Value Point Master Contract. If your state participates in the participating addendum purchasing option for that contract, then you have access. And you can ask us directly if you actually have a participating addendum with your state. We already have these on file. We have all of the contract data information for every single state that we're contracted with under the master contract on NASPO with the purchasing addendums, and we can help you identify that. If not, we can also point you in the right direction as to who you need to talk to make sure that that's an open option for you. You can contact us and we can confirm this the same day you contact us. All right, so what to include in your actual order. When you're ready to place an order, here's what we're going to need from you to make sure all of this stays compliant. We're going to need the languages required, the document types, whether or not remediation is required. We're going to need to know the exact services, so if it's translation or if it's an interpretation project or if it's a WCAG or 508 compliance type project, or the formatting desktop publishing project, whatever it is in the category that flows into this project, we're going to need to know exactly what items you need. And if you don't know, no big deal. Just contact us. We'll help you understand. We'll provide you the guide so that you can be the hero in the story. And for some of these services, some of them are estimated at hours, pages, maybe word count, depending on the type of the content and what's involved in the processing of it. Of course, one of the big factors that really affects the pricing and the urgency of processing the project is the timeline, when you actually need it delivered. And we get them all the time. Hey guys, we just didn't realize that this needed to be done next week. We're in a bind. Can you help us out? And we take a look at it. Yes, no problem. We'll take care of it. And we get it turned in to them on time so that they can present it to their team and be the hero in the story, making sure that everything moves forward for their team. And if there's any agency specific requirements like HIPAA or FERPA or any security clearance levels, those need to be delivered to us upfront to make sure that we're selecting the right vendors and engaging the right contractors for the job. Of course, we issue compliant invoices with the correct line numbers, agency required referral codes, and all of the documentation that your contracting officer is going to need to process and approve the work. All right, so to kind of start bringing this to a close here, here's a couple of very important points. Not all GSA vendors are equal. When you're evaluating, you need to look for organizations that meet and exceed the 17100 verification for ISO. So not all certifications are equal either. So there's ISO 9001, there's ISO 17100, and the list goes on. There is an international standard for translation quality, and in some places that exceeds or falls below the required standards locally. So Taika Translations and our team, we go out and we ensure that all of those standards are met across the board with every single client, submission, and locale. Of course, the vendor needs to have active SAM registration. Sometimes that falls through the crack. People forget, people don't update it, and it just falls off the radar and their SAM activation goes invalid. And if that happens, then you're going to have problems down the road trying to work through the payment and processing of the contract. Whether or not the entity utilizes the ATA certified vendors, and by the way, Taika Translations is currently in the process of developing our certification for our own vendors that meets and exceeds the ATA certification for vendors. As well, there are set-aside options when you're utilizing the different contracting vehicles. So if you're using the GSA contract, the SBA or Small Business Enterprise and Veteran-Owned Small Business certifications may also be to your benefit and something that you need to pay attention to when you're validating the vendors across the board. So we've delivered language compliance, consulting, and translation services for federal agencies, state governments, and school districts across all 50 states. If you're ready to get started, or if you want to verify if we're the right fit for your agency's requirements, go to taikatranslations.com or call us at 830-355-2205. We respond to all government quote requests within a single business day. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.